My reading this month really sucked. So, I don't really have much to talk about, but here we go. Hi everyone! If you're new here, my name is Crystal, also known as the Book Gypsy, and today I'm going to be wrapping up my March reading, which was not very successful. I didn't really read much because I've been in school and I've been kind of cramming and trying to get that done in a timely manner along with working. But I did read 2 arcs. One was rated a 2.5 star and one was rated a 4 star. And I'm also currently reading 2 books, which I'm going to include in this wrap up. I have not star rated them yet, but I'm currently reading them. I started them in March, so they kind of count. They're not finished, but they're part of my wrap up. So let's just get into it. The first book that I finished this month was A Witch's Kind by Louisa Morgan. This was a highly anticipated book for me because I really enjoyed A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan. I thought it was a great generational tale of a family of witches, and they were women, and it was very feminist, and I just really enjoyed the power of women throughout that novel. I enjoyed reading their separate stories and how they all connected and how they were all tied together as per they were great-great-great-great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, that whole situation. It was really, really great. So yeah, so I really loved that book, but A Witch's Kind of missed the mark for me. There wasn't much magical realism type witchy vibes in this book as much as I hoped that it would be. There was a certain element to it, which I'm not going to give away because it's kind of like a spoiler that was in the book, and I just was like, this doesn't really fit. Like, it definitely fit, it just wasn't like, I don't know, the plot was just kind of all over the place. I felt like the book was very rushed, and I think Louisa Morgan could have done a better job working on her plot points rather than, like, you know, just throwing points out there and elaborating on them and telling her story, but not much happened. So it was just, it definitely missed the mark for me. But for the most part, the book was about, again, a family of witches, but it really was truly just based on this girl Barry and her aunt Charlotte. They lived together. Charlotte kind of took Barry under her wing when Barry's mother just passed away. Kind of like Practical Magic in that aspect, where the mother died because, you know, broken heart kind of situation. But anyway, I felt that Charlotte was a really cool character and I wanted to know a little bit more about her story. I kind of touched upon most of her story, but I kind of wanted to know more about Charlotte throughout the book as I got to know her a little bit better. This also took place during World War II, so it was like 1945 to 1948 era, so there was a lot of flashbacks going back to 1945 to like the really height of the war, and also towards the end of like the war where our troops were coming home in 1948. So there was a lot of that, and also Charlotte is gay, so there was a lot of, you know, her story and how she kind of kept that under wraps because she loved women. And so that was really interesting because at that point in time, being gay was not something that people accepted. It was not, you know, sexuality was also an unspoken thing. A lot of things were kept behind closed doors in that time. Even, you know, women and men slept in separate beds during that time period. So sexuality was really not a spoken thing about, let alone being attracted to the same sex was really not something that was talked about. So that was really interesting, Charlotte's story. But getting back to the book itself, I just felt like it fell flat. It just wasn't good, and I just felt like there was so much missing, and I am not really much of a writer, but I could see where things could be fixed and it could have been such a better story. It was based on Barry's life mostly, and it was flashing back from 1945 where she met her husband, who is an abusive man, and he went to war and he lied about their relationship to his parents. They got married and they didn't know about it. It was just a very weird situation. It's just like, she married someone and never met his family. Like, why would you do that? Especially in that era, like, that was kind of unheard of, to just get married and not meet the family or speak to the family or write letters to the family. It's very bizarre. But Barry got married, she had a baby with him, she lost the baby, and she's been kind of secluded in this house in the country on the water, where she would just kind of seclude herself and be away from society because, number one, she doesn't want to ever see her husband again. She's kind of just done with him, and he does make an appearance. He keeps coming back and forth into her life throughout these flashbacks, and he is just not a good person, and he's abusive. So, you know, she had this baby, and then she loses this baby, and then her husband is just this abusive. She's going through a lot, this girl, emotionally. So she's living on this farm on the water, and has a dog her dog is like her companion and her best friend, and her dog goes off and finds something, and this something is a baby, and this baby just showed up from the water, like. And throughout Barry's family history, there was a history of this water witch, you know, in this water, and they didn't really touch much upon that. So, like, you knew that element to the story and it was there, but you didn't really know, like, the whole story of the water witch, which I wanted to touch more upon. And even by 80% into this book, there was nothing. So anyway, so Barry adopts this baby, and she takes care of this baby throughout the book, and Charlotte helps her, and like, this is kind of replacing the baby that she lost, and they come to find out this baby has this crazy thing about it, and it really blows their mind, and they have to cover it up, and they have to pretend like, you know, she's a normal baby, but she's not a normal baby. And then the husband gets back into the picture, and they keep flashing back. Anyway, I know I sound like I'm all over the place, but the book itself, that is literally what happens in the book. So I'm very disappointed in the book, and I don't know if it's because I had an arc of it and maybe it was edited a little bit better. So I'm probably going to pick up the finished copy and read it and see if things were fixed along the way. I don't know with arcs how much the plot changes from arc copy to, you know, finished copy. I really thought it was more grammar stuff, but if the plot does change from the arc to the finished copy, then I will be happy, because maybe things that were kind of left open-ended will be tied together for me. So I am going to pick that book up soon and read it, and I will get back to you and let you guys know my thoughts on the finished copy if things were changed. But like I said, this was a highly anticipated book for me, and the cover is just stunning. I love the cover. I love Louisa Morgan's writing, and that's another thing. Like, yes, the plot lacked, but her writing is just so beautiful. So if you are looking for a witchy type read, a generationalized story, pick up A Secret History of Witches. It's so diverse. It's excellent. I love it. Pick it up and read that. And if you want to, you know, feed your curious mind, pick up A Witch's Kind. Like I said, plot, no, but writing, yes. You know, I flew through that book rather quickly. It was just, I was like, what is, there's nothing happening. So, yeah. So, moving on to my next book that I finished, and that was A Boy and His Dog at the End of the World by C.A. Fletcher. Now, this book was something like I've never read before. It's dystopian. It's end of the world. It's a young boy narrating a story about his family surviving the end of the world. And most end of the world books, it's like people are like cannibals or they're like zombies. Like that's like how a lot of dystopian worlds are, or like Hunger Games where you have to eliminate people to, you know, survive. And like, so this was a little bit different. This was more about the world itself and how people survived after the end of the world. And only a small amount of people have survived on this island. And there are other worlds in between, like other islands in between, and it's, you know, a lot of the world was underwater from what I got. So anyway, so this boy explains in the beginning of the book not to really give much away about this book. So I'm not going to give away much because I want you to read it for yourselves. It was a 4-star for me. I really, really enjoyed it. I was engaged the entire time. The reason why it wasn't a 5-star was because I felt like it was a little too lengthy, leading up to like the action happening. It was like maybe 8 chapters until like things really started happening. And the chapters were pretty long, so I was just kind of like, okay, so when is this gonna happen? And I know there has to be world building and all that stuff, but I don't think it's a series, so it doesn't need to be that complex. Anyway, so getting back into the story. So the main character's name is Grizz, and he explains that in his life, things are different, and he's speaking to you as our, like he's writing a letter, or like he's narrating something. Like he's saying, you know, my life wasn't like yours. My life, I didn't get to watch football or have an iPhone or like anything like that. So it's very, you know, personal when you're reading this book. It's him connecting with you personally. You feel like someone is talking to you. So that's what I really, really loved about this book, because it really helped me to immerse myself. I felt like this person was really connecting with me. This character was really connecting with me. And so he's basically saying, you know, I've read the books. I know what you guys lived with, and all the technology that you had, and all the things that made you happy, and all the materialism that you had that made you happy. Well, in his world, his dogs, okay, his dogs are what makes him happy. That's all he has. He has his family. They have to hunt for food, and they have their dogs, and their dogs are their source of happiness. That is their material thing that they cannot live without. And I feel the same way. I can't live without my dog. So I love having animals. I love my dog. But anyway, on another note, getting back to the book, because I always go off. Getting back to the book. So basically, Grizz and his family are surviving on this island, and somebody from another island comes in and stays with them for a little while, because this person is on the search for his family, or, you know, people that he knows. And one day, you know, him and his dad and this newcomer are just hanging out, and they're talking about the past and things, and, you know, hanging out by a fire. And this guest, this house guest, gives them a drink, and they start drinking a little bit, and Grizz is like, you know what, this is kind of not my taste. Like, I don't really like this. Anyway, come to find out, it is something happens with this drink, and Grizz wakes up, and this man has stolen his dog, his prized possession, his everything, his world. And he goes on this adventure to go get his dog back. And he sees in the distance, when he wakes up, he sees in the distance this man's boat, you know, just drifting away with his dog on it. And he is just so heartbroken, and he's like, what the heck is happening to my life? So it's like his end of the world now is happening because his most prized possession is gone. So he just takes his family's boat by himself with his other dog, and they go on this, you know, adventure to go get his dog back. So that's basically the gist of it. I maybe have revealed slight spoilers, but I don't know any other way to explain this book than that way. To get you to want to read it, because it really was one of my favorite books that I read so far this year. I really, really enjoyed it. So yes, I highly recommend A Boy and His Dog at the End of the World. It is a fun book. It is an adventure book. It will tug on your heartstrings. I definitely teared up a couple times, especially if you were an animal lover, a dog lover. It is just something in us people that it will just bring it out of you. And you just know that connection that you have with animals, or with your dog, or with your cat, or whatever animal you have. You just know that connection, that heartfelt connection, and this book will just, it will relate to you. You will feel so related into this book, and it'll also make you think of the world and like what really does matter to us as human beings. Like, what is it that really matters at the end of the day? So, highly impactful book. Highly recommend this book. Definitely get your copy. I want to say it's out already. No, actually it will be released by Orbit on April 23rd. So thank you, Orbit, for this chance to read this book before release on eARC through NetGallery. I am so excited. I love books by Orbit. A lot of the books that I own are from Orbit, so thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to read this book and tell everybody about it before it comes out. So today is April 1st, so you only have like 22 more days until this book comes out, so definitely add it to your TBR if you have not already. And next book that I'm not done with, but I'm still reading, is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I love this book. There is no other I'm not hating this book. That's not why it's taking me forever to read. I just can't like skim through this book, and I need to take time to really read this book. And it is definitely a simpler type fantasy book. It's not so complex as per like some of the other ones that I have read in the past. So it's definitely, you know, absorbable. I'm understanding the magic system. I get the world building, all of that stuff. I'm just really enjoying it, so I don't want to rush through it, and that is really my answer. So far, I have like a quarter of it left. I am on page 445 of the UK edition of The Final Empire, and I am loving it. I think Brandon Sanderson has a new fan, because this is the first Sanderson that I'm reading. He definitely has a new fan in me. I am looking forward to reading more books from him. It's just gonna take me a while to read his books. I really think that's what it's gonna be. It's just gonna take me a long time to read them. And that's that. So far loving it. I love Vin. I love Vin as a main character. She is so great. And Kelsier, I'm enjoying. I know there's a crazy ending to this book. So yeah. So that's it right now, and I will get back to you guys and let you guys know when I do finish this, probably in my April wrap up. I will let you know my thoughts. Lastly, a book that I'm reading on my Kindle is When the Sky Fell on Splendor by Emily Henry. I'm loving this book. This is such a great book. This is what I need right now. I usually don't read books about extraterrestrial experiences. It's not really my thing. I love Stranger Things, but I'm starting to think this is more my thing now that I'm reading it. It's also really young adults, but it's kind of in the middle. It's kind of in the middle because these aren't like so young, these kids. They're a little bit, you know, older. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the story. I'm about halfway through. I love the main character. The only problem I'm having is the time jumps. When there's flashbacks happening, I'm kind of losing it a little bit. Because I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't happening now. This is the past. Like, I kind of have to separate it myself. There's no like time frame like, oh, 2 years ago. Or like a year ago. And then now, you know, I wish there was a little bit more of that in between. But other than that, it's a really cool story. I'm starting to get into more of what happened the night that this thing fell on Splendor and what happened to these kids when they experienced it. So it's really cool. It's a great story. If you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't want to give it away. I've never read anything from Emily Henry, but I do know there's a lot of magical realism in her stories, and I'm looking forward to reading more from her. I do own A Million Junes by her, so I'm hoping to get that in one of my TBRs coming up soon. I didn't really read much this month, but that's okay. That's okay. School is important, and I still had time to read. It's just I can't read 6 books a month. I think about, finishing 2, in the middle of 2. I think that's a decent amount for the month. So yeah, so stay tuned for my April TBR and what I'll be reading in the April month. So that video should be coming up at like maybe a couple days after this one. We'll see what happens if I have time to upload it. And yeah, so that is it. That is all I have for you, and I'll be talking to you guys soon. Bye!